Maybe I can kill this fucking fly while we're. Maybe I can kill this fucking fly while we're. Maybe I can kill this fucking
Missed.
fly while we're. Maybe I can kill this fucking
Missed.
fly while we're. Maybe I can kill this fucking
Missed.
fly while we're. Maybe I can kill this fucking
Missed.
fly while we're. Maybe I can kill this fucking
Missed.
fly while we're. Maybe I can kill this fucking
Missed.
fly while we're. Maybe I can kill this
I
fucking
don't
fly
know.
while we're. Maybe I can kill this
I
fucking
could give a dissertation on things other than killing flies, if that would
I
help.
could give a
Track
dissertation
audio.
on things other than killing flies.
Yeah, no, I
If
was,
that
I
would
was
help. Give a
track
dissertation
audio.
on
Keep
things
talking
other
until
than
you
killing
tell
flies.
me
Yeah,
to
no,
stop.
give a dissertation
Audio.
on
Keep
things
talking
other
until
than
you
killing
tell
flies.
me
Yeah,
to
no,
stop.
give a dissertation
Keep
on things
talking
other
until
than
you
killing
tell
flies.
me
Yeah,
to
no,
stop.
give a dissertation
Audio.
on
Keep
things
talking
other
until
than
you
killing
So
flies.
apparently
Yeah,
they
no,
can hear us.
give a dissertation
audio.
on
Keep
things
talking
other
until
than
you
killing
So
flies.
apparently they can hear us.
All right. This should hopefully fix everything. All right. This should
Can you hear us now?
fix
Testing, testing, testing.
Can you
How
hear
do
us
I
now?
sound? Is it beautiful? Is it gorgeous? Do you love it?
There we go. I figured out why everything was echoing. I still had the Twitch unmuted in the background, so hopefully no more fly loops. All right. So Tier,
All right.
let's
No,
let's start from the beginning.
No, if that fly
Hi.
back, folks, I have chopsticks. I will get that.
Again, thank you everyone for dealing with us as we tried out some new tech stuff. We've got it all figured out now. But Tier's going to kick us off here.
So, once again, as I was saying before, thank you so much. This is Will of the Dice Presents Cast Guidance. A bunch of DMs sitting around talking DM shit. Just be mindful that this is for mature audiences, and we are in no way affiliated with any tabletop role-playing manufacturer, production, or author. We are just a bunch of people giving our input and insight into common everyday situations, and hopefully we'll help you, and if not, at least you'll have fun hanging out with us. So without further ado, let's just go ahead and get into introductions, and we'll start with our special guest, John.
I'm John. This time you can hear me. You know me if you're a fan of this channel as one of the producers here. But what you may not know is I am the voice of Carlton Tanks on Dungeon Drunks, a 5th edition podcast. We've done D&D Live, different podcasts for all the different releases. Again, no way actually affiliated with WotC. But I'm also a author for the D&D Adventurers League CCC program. So that's a little bit about me.
All right, thank you, John. And our Will of the Dice player, our assistant executive producer, and our audio guy, the one and only Locke.
Hi, gamers. Locke Clark here. I am a cast member at Will of the Dice. I'm also the podcast producer and help with the audio. I have been a DM in the past. I play on both the Saturday and Sunday night streams as Bjarnor Sangar, the dwarf werebear, on Saturday nights, and Croc Stoutheart, the orc cleric, on Sundays. And it is a pleasure to be here and join you all today to do roundtable discussions about D&D, tabletop in general, and rules minutia, because frankly, I love that shit. You can find me on the Facebooks and the Twitters at Locke Unruly. That's Locke with an H.
All right, thank you, Locke. John, before we go any further, where can they find you on the social medias?
On the social medias, there are two places you can find me. At Dungeon Drunks, which is our official podcast social handle. Normally we have it down here, but because of our tech stuff, we're going to just listen to our socials. And then you can also find me on the socials personally at that_film_guy.
Thank you so much, John. And for those of you that don't know me, I'm Tier the DM. I'm the world's okayest DM. I've been DMing for 30 plus years now. I have a lot of experience homebrew. It's a passion of mine, a hobby. I love it. And that's why we're here, is to talk about shit we love. And, maybe every now and then me and Locke will get into an argument. Who knows? So today we're going to talk a little bit about our history as DMs. And then we're going to get into the meat and the potatoes of the episode. And we are going to talk about safety and consent. We are pulling a page from the BDSM handbook. We have a consent form. I believe y'all will be seeing it on your screen.
Yep.
That sets your yeses, your maybes, your nos, or as we like to call them, soft limits, hard limits, veils. This is important in D&D. This is, we can get into some very serious topics. And as a dungeon master, we want to make sure that we're providing a pleasurable experience. And as a player, you want to make sure your experience is pleasurable. But we'll get into that shortly. For now, I'm going to kick it over to, I'm going to roll a dice to see who gets to go first this time.
Wait. Do we need to do announcements?
Oh, yeah, I know.
Yeah, before we get really started.
Okay, so for those of you that don't know, I'm fighting pneumonia, and I'm not so much in it today. So, yes, announcements. We have announcements.
Shall I kick off the announcements here?
Kick off the announcements, Locke.
I will kick this pig. Hi, gamers. So, we want to talk to you about our partners in this and all the endeavors we do here on this channel. Level Up Dice, find purveyors of luxury dice for all your sexy dice needs. And I am going to talk to you today about Will of the Dice accepting the great responsibility, the the weight of this challenge has been put upon our shoulders, and we are happy to take it up. We are the official ambassadors of a set of Level Up dice now. They are, oh, they are so pretty. They are blueberry cat's eye dice. There they are right there on your screen. You can see them, and you want a better picture of them, you should go check them out, and I'll give you that portal in just a second. I want to give you some of the pertinence on these. This is the official set for Will of the Dice, and in the world of Runeth Kesha, and these magical, ethereal, breathless dice are designed and placed on their holographic glass. They are a Sylvan glyphic, which is a very elven-looking, very cool glyphic, um, and yeah. So you need to go check these out. We have a special portal for checking out this set of dice, in addition to our usual portal. So if you just want to go look at stuff, but you want to let Level Up know that you came from us, that portal is https://bit.ly/capital L, capital U, capital D, capital Will, capital of, capital the, capital Dice, all one word. That's bit.ly/LUD, Will of the Dice, all one word. But if you want to look at these dice in particular, we have a special bit.ly for them, and that's bit.ly/capital W, capital O, capital T, capital D, capital Dice. That's WOTD Dice. Will of the Dice dice. Go check those out. They, like I said, they are gorgeous. We are their official ambassadors, and we are so happy that Level Up has chosen to bestow this honor upon us and let us bring these dice to you. And that's all I have, Tier.
All right, awesome. John, you got any announcements?
Um, so my announcements are not really. John's been over here just kind of producing the channel. We've got some new shows in the works that you guys should keep your eyes out for. Always getting new people onto Story Master Madness. For my podcasting front, we just released a new episode on Monday, and for my writing, we are working on a guidebook to our series. So keep an eye out on DM's Guild for that.
Nice, awesome. I want to give a special shout out to all of y'all. Thank you so much for supporting us and helping us get this far. It's crazy. We got like 1,200 followers on Twitter. Like it's absolutely amazing.
I'm sorry, Tier. I think you said that wrong. Did you mean to say all y'all?
Yeah.
You put an extra syllable in there. It was weird.
Oh, sorry.
You said all of you all.
Uh,
What's an olive?
All
uh,
y'all, all y'all, hey, all y'all.
I'm sorry. My Southern was just coming out for a second, guys.
Hey, I'm Southern too. It's okay. One thing I want to take a quick moment to is that because a lot of the stuff we do on our streams, like our one community, one campaign, and everything, doesn't quite carry over. But we do want to carry over the Goat to Fund Me. Our cast member, Ren Matley, her and her farming partner are working on buying the land that their farm is on. They've incurred a lot of extra costs. They've got an amazing GoFundMe up that they're running. Uh, and it's an exorbitant amount of number. But if we get to some special numbers, like I believe 10,000 lock,
10,000 was the number.
10,000
It's a little
locks,
over halfway to the goal.
a little over halfway to the goal. Lock's going to. Oh, Lock, tell them what you're going to do, Lock.
So I'm a heat seeker, just so that we get that clear out of the gate. So if we hit $10,000 in the GoFundMe, I am going to do the one chip Carolina Reaper potato chip challenge live on stream while playing D&D. So y'all are gonna get to watch me eat a Carolina Reaper potato chip on stream and then suffer through it while I try to play D&D. In addition to that, because I'm an idiot and a glutton for punishment, I let Ben, who plays Merc Wharton Tarios, talk me in to adding to that. So once we hit 10,001, I will put a dab of Apollo hot sauce. That's the one they use for the last dab on the hot ones. I will put a dab of that on the potato chip and eat it, and then try to play D&D. Also, once we get past the $10,000 mark, anytime that tier rolls a natural 20 to make it hurt even more for us players, I'm going to do a dab of that hot sauce on my finger. There's that damn fly. Missed it. So yeah, and then once we hit 15,000, Merkwort Tarios, Ben is going to do the same one chip challenge with the dab of hot sauce on it, and I believe he is going to do a finger dab every time he rolls a nat 1 to make it hurt himself even more. And then if we hit the full goal, which is $17,700, Shelly, who is not the heat seeker that Ben and I are, is going to do the one chip challenge. So that will be fun to watch Dandy try to play while sweating through the heat from a Carolina Reaper potato chip.
Good times.
And
good
while I
times.
join you all, I will not be doing that because I am not going to do well with that kind of heat, but I will laugh my ass off watching you on the show.
Pretty much.
For full disclosure, I am the kind of guy who goes to an Indian restaurant and I ask them to serve it to me the way they eat it at home. We have an Indian restaurant in Atlanta that I love called Planet Bombay. Viral marketing. Planet Bombay, they offer a spice level of 1 to 5. And I asked the waiter, I said, I'm like, I want this the way you guys eat it. I want not white man spice, real spice. And he said, oh, you want 7. I'm like, I didn't know it goes to 7. Yes, let me have 7. I ate the whole plate. While the entire kitchen staff had come to the door to watch to see how the white guy reacted. It was great. It was wonderful.
All right. Awesome. All right. So I guess let's get into it. We wanted to start off a little bit talking about our history. We won't, since we're running late, we won't get into too much of that so that we can focus on the actual consent and safety aspect of the show we're wanting to do today. John, you start us off, man.
Yeah, so today's topic, as Tier was saying, is safety, comfort, and consent. And this is, in my opinion, one of the most important things that you do in your session 0 or even a session 0 when you're just determining if you want to play D&D with some friends. And it's been getting a lot of becoming more visible nowadays, which I super love. I'll admit, when we first started playing Dungeon Drunks 5 years ago, granted we were 5 friends who know each other for a decade, so we didn't really have to have it, but I am probably going to be sending this over to our DM for the future because there are certain things that might be triggering to me that she may not think about. Like, for example, one of my hard lines is cancer. I lost my father a few years ago to cancer, and I just don't want to have that in my game. To some people, that may not seem like a big thing. It's just cancer. It's a disease, whatever. But to me, it's just like, it's not super, I wouldn't want to say triggering. I don't have like a post-traumatic response for it. It's just something I don't want to experience in my game. And so even if you've got friends that you've been playing with for decades, this is a very nice way, an easy way to tell them, hey, this is what I'm comfortable with and what I'm not comfortable, and what is okay if it's over here, or okay if our PCs are going to do something about it, like homophobia and racism. It's like, well, I'd rather it not be in the game, but if it is going to be part of your story, I would like it to be off screen, over here where my hands are, and it's something that myself as a player can try to fix. That's how I kind of like those types of things. But yeah, comfort, safety, and consent, it's something that we've implemented here at Level Up TTV. Some of our shows will do that talk on air. Most of them will have it off air in the green room beforehand, especially whenever we have any new players coming to the channel. It is super important to us that everybody has a safe and fun TTRPG environment.
We appreciate that about you, John. John, can you give us a quick rundown of your credentials, like your history is in playing TTRPGs in general? Just
right. We're supposed to do our intros first, not the safety. I thought the other part was the intros.
It's okay. It's okay. You're all good.
Yeah. Sorry.
I was just going to be a cool broadcaster and just smooth over that with a nice transition into you talking about the thing that was on the page. But go ahead.
Yeah, no. Yeah, so I've been playing, I started playing TTRPGs with Dungeon Drunks probably about 7 years ago now. So not as experienced as some of those people that have been playing for 30 plus years, but I kind of went full ham into it. Like, I let it evolve my life. Like, I've got ink on my body to represent it. Also down here, I'm not going to bring up my leg and show you all that leg. I've got writing credentials from Adventurers League. Like I said earlier in our intros, I've done podcasting with WotC for D&D Live. And then here over at the channel, helping to produce a lot of the shows that we do. So that's kind of my background, is just in the 5th edition space.
Very cool. Thank you, John.
What about your credentials, Locke?
Oh, my credentials. I don't have any. I certainly am not published. Well, actually, okay, technically I am. Damn it! I was going to try and be self-effacing here, but they were okay. So I've been playing D&D since I was 8 years old. So that's been a minute, 35 years now, ish. Yeah, that's 35. Soon to be 36. So yeah, I'm an old man and I play D&D. When I started, the first thing I played was first edition, where your race and your class are the same thing. I have played every edition of D&D except fourth. I never actually played it. I bought the book and I read it, and I hated it. And I didn't get to play it. I didn't really want to either. Anyway, and no offense, if fourth was your jam, if that's how you got into D&D, cool for you, and congratulations on being here. It just was not a system I cared for. I've played in multiple RPGs and LARPs over the years. I did like a 10-year stint playing and running a vampire LARP. I've DM'd in multiple systems, including various versions of D&D, mostly 3.5, and some Vampire the Masquerade, and Star Wars. I'm a giant nerd who has lots of nerd ink on my body, including my first tattoo was a dragon, so that counts. It's not I don't have dice, but it was a dragon, and I have been a playtester and writer on 2 different systems now. One is called Imagine, the Imagine role-playing system. I was a playtester and writer for them. I helped write a couple of their classes. And there's a yet unpublished system that I can't quite talk about yet that I have been working on playtesting and writing with one of my best friends.
Nice. Very cool. Let's see. As I said at the beginning, I have been playing Dungeons and Dragons for about 36 years. I've been a forever DM for about 35 years. Until recently, thanks to Ren running her once a month game. I have created 15 or 16 different homebrew settings. I started back in 2nd edition, Bring Back Thaco, and absolutely loved it. I did not get into any edition after 2nd until 5th, and I just sort of stumbled into it. And like most everybody else I talk to, it's like an obsession. Like, I think about D&D more than I honestly probably should. Oh, mercy sakes alive. So that's my background. So what we're talking about today is, as John had touched on, and we've touched on a couple of times, is comfort, consent, and safety at your table. As a DM, the one thing that I would absolutely hate is to know that I triggered someone, I gave someone a negative emotional experience. Now, don't get me wrong, there's difference between upsetting a player because an NPC dies or something like that, because some people get attached to NPCs and I am a bastard and will kill them. But there's also a difference between getting into a level of something where people are not comfortable, such as one of the big ones that has come up in conversations that I've had with people is rape. I've had conversations with people where they were female players playing their first time, and the DM basically had an NPC rape their character. To me, that's not cool. That is not cool at all. You know, yeah, big X. And
Get that.
so, yeah, so now, as you said, John, we're seeing a lot more of uh, this discussion on comfort, consent, and safety come into the spotlight. What do you think that is? Either one of you, whoever.
I think it's more because of the renaissance RPGs has had in the past few years, like with shows like Critical Role, and like all the streams that Watsy's doing. Like it's becoming, it's no longer just a bunch of kids in their basement, right? It's now a celebrity thing, and so when the celebrities endorse these things, more people are going to start trying it, and it's going to bring more people, both good and bad, because like you said, it's brought some of those DMs that did those things that you mentioned earlier, but I think it's bringing more good than it is bad. And I think that, especially with shows like Critical Role, they've talked about how they've had these kind of conversations. And that's why it's bringing this into the spotlight, is because those with the voice are saying, hey, this is important. You should be doing this. And yeah, we just want to make sure, like you said, nobody ever gets triggered.
I think it's also part of the reason that this is becoming a wider topic of discussion in the D&D community is the growing diversity of the D&D community.
Yeah.
When I started playing, it was mostly white dudes playing D&D. And now there's a huge portion of the LGBT community, of which I'm a member, that play D&D. There is something like there, and I can't speak outside of my own experience, but I can imagine that as a trans person, and my partner is trans, I have a trans kid, um, that as a trans person, getting to inhabit the gender and body you want to inhabit in your D&D character is a really cool thing. It's a really cool way to explore yourself and get to feel those feelings of acceptance in the gender you belong in among your friends without having to go through any other steps other than making a character. It's also a good way. I know a lot of people in the LGBT community test out their gayness in D&D. Like, they haven't told their friends that they're gay, and they play a character who is either a different gender than them, so that they can flirt with the people of the gender they want to flirt with in game and try it out, or they play a gay character so they can see how their friends react to them as a gay character. And I'm not saying by any means that someone playing a gay character means they're secretly gay and testing the waters, but that does happen,
Yeah.
and it's one of the draws of D&D for the LGBT community. And when you start bringing in marginalized communities to another community, they're going to start bringing things with them. And you're going to hear us talk a lot today. A lot of the consent rules, me and Tier looked at them and we're like, I've seen these before because they exist in the kink community. The kink community is the best community for consent because everything you do has to have the utmost level of consent so that you're not doing illegal things. You have to be super consent aware when practicing in the kink community. So a lot of these rules are like, we have different names for them, but like lines and veils in the kink community is called soft and hard lines or limits. This is a soft limit, this is a hard limit. Well, that's a line and a veil in D&D safety tool terms. But so you might hear us interchange terms sometimes. And if we do, we're sorry. We're going to try and keep to the D&D terms as much as possible.
But now you'll
But
at
yeah,
least know what we're talking about.
right. So yeah, I think that communities coming together, D&D itself becoming more diversified. Also,
Yeah.
I hate the term politically correct, but the world is becoming more inclusively aware
I like that term. That's a much better
on
term.
on how to uh, on how to interact with people and keep people safe and keep people comfortable. Because as we have more friends who are diverse, we start to learn how to interact with them without being accidentally triggering. And so I think this is a natural step for D&D to take as its diversity has grown.
I agree with you. You know, as in my 30 some years DMing, I've had multiple people from the LGBTQ community at my table. You know, I've been a LGBTQ community ally for a long time. Uh, and you know, it's one of those things that it's like you know, when they come to me and they're like, "Hey, you know, I want to play. You know, I'm this, whatever that you know they identify with or whatever." You know, the first thing I ask them, "Does anybody know? Are you okay if I let the group know?" That sort of thing, and just judge everybody's comfort level. You know, I've never denied anybody access to my table because of being LGBTQ. Never, and I never will. You know, and no, but none of my players, I'm blessed to have amazing people that play it with me, have ever. But you do see that. I think one of the biggest things that's bringing this to light is like, not only has this gone super mainstream, and not only we're seeing more diverse people, I think we're a more connected people now.
Yeah.
I think where we have the ability to speak to each other in instants, you know, and just in moments we can communicate with masses amounts of people, that we're bringing more light to issues that people back in the day ignored or weren't aware of, you know. And so I think with that, it's just a natural evolution that we're seeing these more and more people taking into consideration things of this nature in their tabletop, in their everyday lives. And I think that that is awesome that we're seeing, you know, the crossover where we're bringing the, you know, the safe space that we offer as allies to different communities, whether it's kink, LGBTQ, or whatever, you know, where we as individuals offer that safety. I think it's awesome that we as DMs can also offer that same safety at our table.
Okay, so guys, let's walk through the consent and consent forms in session 0 real quick, and why those things are important. I know you can all see on the screen in sort of this area over here, um, that we have a consent form up. This is the one that was made. John, did you make this one?
This was actually Lanta. I mean, I
Ah,
gave her a little
okay,
bit of input, but she
yeah.
did all the hard work. I did make the check boxes though, but they.
Oh well, there you go. Thank you. So,
But she was the one that put all of this together, and she was like, "Hey, just is there anything that's missing? Anything else you think I should add?" And then I was like, "Put a little checkbox in there because instead of having to type an X, I like to put a little check."
yeah. So we've got so if you can see it on the screen here.
We also,
We've got
if you scroll through chat, there's a Dropbox links. I put it in my personal Dropbox for anybody who wants to use it in their home game. Please, it's free to use, free to share. Please go ahead and use it. It's, I love it. Or adapt from it. You know, make what works for you.
right, exactly. So if you want to look over this form, and we're going to run through and talk about it a little bit, and what some of the things on it are. Um, we've already covered a couple of them, but we can just dive into them real quick. So what you have is you have your topics, and then you have your 3 levels of consent: green, yellow, and red. Um, green meaning consent, bring it on. Um, uh, yellow is it's okay if it's veiled or if it's off screen, and red is the hard line. Absolutely not. Do not include this. Um, you get your horror topics, which are blood and bugs and demons and eyeballs and gore, harm to animals, harm to children, rats, spiders, and other. I love that these have a space for others, so you can put
Yeah,
in things
this is
you
by
don't.
no means all inclusive. There are a billion topics out there that could be included in consent. And if, like, for those of you who are looking at home, I'm going to scroll all the way bottom. Further discuss it with your DM is at the very bottom. Like, hey, like, this is not meant to be all inclusive. There are things that we are going to forget, ones that we didn't think of that might be triggering to someone else. We've tried to hit the broad strokes with this. And as he was Locke was going through it, you can see I'm actually filling it out for my personal levels, what I like, so you can see on screen. So for me, I can set it on to everything except for harm to animals and children, which I want to happen off screen if it is going to happen.
Right, and that's the thing. So and that's an important spot to talk to your DM.
Yeah.
And DMs to talk to your players. When someone has a thing that falls into the category of if veiled or offstage, into that yellow category, um, there is a line there for me personally. Harm to animals and children. I, I, it depends. Like I'm okay with if I'm riding a horse, the horse taking the fireball and dying, and me, being saved by my horse. That's fine. That can happen on screen no matter how much I love the horse. It will make good story and I'm okay with it. But like,
The
a
guy who
guy
kicks a
murdering a
puppy.
puppy, right? That's different.
Yeah.
Also, if you and if the DM is going to, I think that this is where you have to have that conversation like you were saying earlier. If I can do something about it,
Yeah.
That makes a difference to me. I want it to happen off screen unless I can do something
For
about
me,
it.
I would still rather it happen off screen and do something about it, like harm to children. I don't want to
Right.
see a guy punching his kid in the game. I don't want it described. But if the DM would be like, yeah, so and so is known child abuser. All right, well that's off screen. I'm not
Right.
he's not descriptively describing the
Right.
abuse, and so I'm okay with that because now I can deal with it.
And
you know?
that's a veil.
Yeah.
Like, all right. So, when talking about veils and lines, real quick, this is one of my pet peeves in media. My hard line on across the board, no matter what I'm doing, is sexual assault. I
Yeah.
don't want to see it. I don't ever. I can't find an example of a sexual assault in a movie or a TV show that was necessary for us to see.
No. Exactly.
There are ways that a director in a film can tell you something happened without showing it to you. The movie, the one that like really trips my button because it was such a good movie up until that point was Horns. I don't know if you've seen it.
No.
Daniel Radcliffe. The movie is great and it's going along. And by the time they get to the part with the sexual assault, you as an audience member have gotten it. You understand where the story is going and what has happened because it's a flashback near the end of the movie. And by that point, you get it. You know what happened here. But then they show it explicitly. Like, no, there was no reason for that. We all already, before you started that scene, we got it.
We knew what was happening.
We knew what was happening. We knew what happened in this flashback. You could have cut away and had it be off camera instead of following the action that deeply. You didn't need to do it. And so, like, if a guy is a child abuser and is beating his kid, the DM saying, you hear this happen is different than you hear each wet punch as the guy, like you can veil it by just telling us
It
you
happened.
hear, understand this is happening.
Well, one thing
Yeah, go ahead.
One thing I'd like to throw in on this. Okay, so this is speaking from personal experience talking about veils. In one of my campaigns, there was a demonic force that leveled an entire city. When the people come in, when the players come in, they're asking, who was killed, who was maimed, who was destroyed. I just said everyone. And when they asked for specifics, I said men, women, children, everybody.
Yeah.
I didn't go into details of the, twisted bodies of anybody, but it was still enough and done in such a way that it was impactful enough that the players got the gist of the emotion. And I think a lot of times that people don't realize that you can take something and veil it or put it off screen and still have an emotional impact so that it drives the story without making it too much. You don't have to bring every gratuitous little event to the forefront.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I think that's really important. We should go over some more of the things. There's that fly. I'm going to kill that fly. Um,
That's actually a hard line for me. You killing that fly, so that fly has
oh,
to live.
oh, God. All right. You know,
Enough joking aside, though, you can kill the fly.
if it happens, it'll happen off screen.
There we
Enjoy
go.
that. And then the next section is relationships, romance, uh, whether or not romance needs to just fade to black for you, whether it can be explicit, between whether it can be between PCs and NPCs, between PCs and PCs, and then how you feel about sex in the game,
Yeah.
whether that needs to fade to black,
Yep.
or whether that can be explicit sometimes, and whether it can be between NPCs and PCs, or just between PCs and PCs.
So for
Um,
me, romance, I'm fine. My consent is I'm fine with romance. I'm fine with it fading to black. Explicit romance, just put it off screen. PCs, NPCs, NPCs, totally fine with me. Sex, all of that is veiled off screen, and not because like I don't want it in my game at all. I have never had a good experience where it didn't make the table super awkward or somebody uncomfortable, and just like let's just not. Like you were talking about like characters earlier. Like I have a character I'm playing in our Rhyme the Frost Maiden, a dwarf. He has a husband and they have a bunch of children, and that is it. Like, hey hun, how are you? And it's like everything else happens off screen.
yeah, so the romance, like I'm okay with romance. Um, all right, so I'm tripped up here a little bit, and I keep like my brain keeps trying to imagine like explicit romance as opposed to sex, because romance and sex are different things. So like explicitly romancing someone, that's like wooing them, right? Like
For
buying them
me, it's
flowers.
like spending time, like not just
Okay,
wooing, but like, hey, here, we're gonna like act out this entire scene, this date. Like that's how I would see explicit. Like we're gonna sit down and like actually date each other, like PC NPC or PC and PC, and we're gonna go through the actual role playing moments as opposed to like I'm just gonna do a couple of roles and try to woo you. So that's where
so
I read explicit romance is like where you're literally trying to act out the romance. And like
so
I said,
so
it just gets awkward when, especially like when you're not the party involved, and you're
right.
just sitting there watching two people trying to fall in love and
So that
eating your Doritos.
that very emotional scene in that really popular stream with the voice actors, with the monk and the barbarian going on a date inside uh, the magic tower. You don't want that in your game.
Like I don't mind watching other people games, but like when I'm at the table with
In your
you,
game, I mean, in your game, yeah.
yeah, exactly. When I'm at the table, it's just you're the third wheel, right? Because
Okay,
especially that very popular show with all the famous actors, that is a television show essentially to us.
right.
It is
To us, yes.
content and media, so we are watching it. We are not
Right.
living it. Just sitting like, have you ever been a third wheel on a date? It's just
Yeah. Yeah. No, I
super
get it. I get it.
super awkward. Just,
Thank you for helping me like lock what explicit romance in a D&D game looks like in my head. Okay.
that's how at least I read it. Now, chat,
Right.
you may read it
Right.
as something else. And again, this
Yeah.
is all
No,
personal to you.
that's a great description. I think Tyr handles that and the sex really well, um, because Karak has had. I think Karak is the only character in either of the games that has had sex in game.
Yep, he's a whore.
That and every time Tyr has done a beautiful fade to black. We have not, like, the description was, I pick a boy, I pick a girl, I take them both to my room, and we have a good time. And then Tyr says, and the next morning,
Yeah,
you all wake up and you had a wonderful time,
having had a good time.
and uh, and that was it. Yeah. So and I like that. I have played in games where I have played in, what was it? It was GURPS. It was where the DM, or maybe it was third edition. I don't remember. Where every time someone tried to have sex in game, you had to make a beast riding plus charisma check. Like that's
That's one. I also
right.
wouldn't describe it as beast riding.
Well, that trying to stay on the back of a horse and trying to to stay in the saddle, as it were, can be described as the same thing according to this DM.
Yeah.
So, like why, like any,
No.
I'm secure enough in my sexual prowess that I don't need a dice roll to try and make me feel good about how good the sex was. I don't. That doesn't need to be part of the game. That doesn't, in my opinion, like I don't need to roll a die to see if I was a good lover tonight.
And see, that's one of the things. Like in some of my games, I have jokingly
You have.
made people make performance rolls. As it, because we were sitting around the table, it was part of. We had these kind of discussions about what people were okay with and
Yeah.
everything, and so as a joke, I have done performance rolls. Because it was a very lighthearted situation. But most of the times, I would never ask anybody to roll for sexual prowess.
No. And you can have those joke rolls and stuff like that when you have those conversations ahead of time and you are comfortable enough with the players. Like when I DM'd and somebody wanted to try to flirt with a shopkeep to get the deal, it's like, all right, give me a couple of persuasion and performance rolls to flirt, and then it goes off camera. You know, because you're just coming off the street. It's not like you've been building a relationship for 20 years with this person, right? It's like, why is this shop? Maybe the shopkeep's happily married, has 10 kids. Who knows?
Exactly.
So you get the couple of rolls for the persuasion to get the whatever you're trying to get, and then everything else happens off screen.
So now I want to ask about. We've talked about what is consent stuff, or do you want to go through the checklist further? What?
Let's run through the rest of the checklist real
Okay.
quick. I mean, we're just gonna kind of blow through it so that we get social and cultural issues. We have homophobia, racism, real world religion, sexism, specific cultural issues, pedophilia, necrophilia, other. For those, um, John's going to fill in his
Yep.
on the screen, I'm sure. I am okay with all of those. Mostly okay with them even being on screen. I prefer if it is something that is not explicit.
Yeah.
Most of the time, I'm okay with it being explicit though if it is something that I can deal with, and take out my aggressions towards that issue on an NPC.
Yeah.
So
Same
that
here.
makes it.
All of it for me is a veil, except for necrophilia and pedophilia. That is a hard line. That I don't even want that off camera dealing with. That just does not. I do not want that in my game at all. Big ol' X. Everything else,
Yeah,
like you said, homophobia, racism, stuff like that. If you're putting that off camera and I can fix it by dealing with it, then I'm okay with it being in game. But like, I don't need to
yeah.
experience the racism.
Yeah, pedophilia needs to be behind a veil at least. There's no reason for that to be explicit on camera ever. But once again, I'm okay with it being in the world
Yeah.
and finding out that it happened, because then I can go and murder the NPC who did it and feel good about my life all of a sudden, because I can't do that in real life. Uh,
So one thing I want to interject right here as we're going through this list. This list is not just for players. I want to make sure that's understood.
Yeah.
As a DM, I have hard limits and soft limits as well. I will, so I just want that out there. If you're listening to this, watching us or whatever, and you're a DM, you should fill one of these out as well, because it you want to make sure everybody has a good time. And
yeah,
so back to you, Luke.
we are talking about this as if we are, mostly from a player standpoint. Tier's right, and we're all DMs here too, so that's a thing. Like, as a DM, filling out this is an exercise in self introspection. Like, you may not have thought about one of these issues and that it might be triggering and how it could be triggering and how you feel about that. So going through this list yourself and thinking about each one of these things. Um, so then we have the mental and physical illness, or mental and physical health section, which includes cancer, claustrophobia, freezing to death, gaslighting, genocide, heat stroke, natural disasters, paralysis slash physical restraint, police and police aggression, pregnancy, miscarriage, abortion, self harm, severe weather, sexual assault, starvation, terrorism, torture, thirst, food restriction, withholding food, fire, and specific phobias, and then the other section. So uh, we already touched on cancer
Yeah.
being a hard line
Yeah, and it's
for
like
John.
I personally experienced loss from that. Somebody very, very close to me, like, and it's just like, D&D is escape for a lot of people, and that's just one thing that a lot of people wouldn't find triggering, but for me, it just brings up both happy and sad memories, right? Like it always makes me remember my father very fondly, but then also the very sad time of having to watch him go through hospice and stuff like that. And it's just not something I want to have to be dealing with as a player when I'm in the mind of my character.
Um, for me, the ones that stand out on this list, paralysis and physical restraint. I think that needs to be handled with care. Sometimes veiled, depends on the situation.
Yeah.
Like, certain spells in combat aside,
Yeah.
just those, that I don't think that counts towards this issue so much, unless a person is super hard triggered by that. Then the DM should avoid using those spells on that person. Um,
Again, if you would love to further discuss with your GM, please let them know.
yes. Um, I think police aggression is something that needs to be handled with care. But once again, that's in the category of if I can do something about it, I'm more okay with it. Obviously, pregnancy, miscarriage, and abortion are all subjects that should be handled with care all the time. If they are not, then I'm going to be upset with the DM, but I'm okay with giving them my full consent. Um, because I have people in my life who've had abortions and who've had horrendous miscarriages, and so I have feelings about them, but I personally am still okay with seeing them in a D&D game. Sexual assault is my super hard line.
Yeah.
Like I don't want it.
Same here.
There's no reason for it to be here. It does not enrich the game in any way, in my opinion. There is nothing that um, you can put. There's nothing you can do with a sexual assault in the game that you can't do through another means to cause whatever pathos you want
Yeah.
in a character. You don't need it. Um, the rest of them I don't have any issues with at all.
Torture I have being off camera veiled because again, like the sex and stuff like that, it's usually the somebody trying to play out a fantasy that they have, and it's like I just don't want to sit through this fantasy of yours. You could say this person's being tortured in the other room. I'm fine with that. They shoved the bamboo. No, no, stop. Right? Like I don't need you to like act out your war fantasies to characters. Um, and
And
again, like we
that
said, this isn't a comprehensive list, and you've seen me say it, like do it a couple times. If something ever does arise in game, just give your DM the X. Like just let them know, like, hey, that we just found something that I'm not comfortable with right now.
We're
Just throw
gonna
up
we're
that
gonna
card.
cover that in a few minutes.
Oh, there we go. Even better.
Yep.
now I want to say that. So I've been doing this for a long time, and I've had people come to me and be like, "I really want to play this out," and I'm like, "New, new, new, new," because it passes my hard limits. So as a DM, if you have hard limits, stick to them. Do not be afraid. If players come
Yeah.
to you and be like, if your hard limit, I'm going to go with cancer because that's one of my hard limits as well. I lost my father to cancer. If one of your hard limits is cancer and your player's like, I really want my character to have cancer, just tell them no and
Or
explain to
hey, I
them
don't think this is
why.
the game for you.
Yeah, have an adult conversation about it. 99% of the shit that goes wrong with D&D games can be resolved with an adult conversation.
Yeah.
Notice the word adult. You have to sit down and be mature and discuss each thing without getting upset, flying off the handle, and let your emotions take away with you. But as a DM, you also have the right to say, no, this is my hard line. This is something I'm not comfortable with. If this is a deal breaker for you, then like you said, John, you need to find another game
Yeah.
because it's not something I'm going to put myself into that emotional place just so that you can have that in your backstory.
People often forget that the DMs are players too. They are here to have a fun, good time, just like you as the player. And no one should be taking that away from anyone.
real quick before we move on to lines and veils, I just want to we've gone through the consent form. We've talked a lot about why it's important. But also let since we just it's a nice segue from what we just said. Session zeros, which is where everyone sits down, you flesh out your characters, you figure out how your characters are connected, you all talk about how the world is going to look, how the campaign's tone is going to run, things like that. It's a place where you can discuss things that are on the consent form, let the other players know where your hard lines are so they don't trip over them, that sort of thing. Um, and I think it's really important for you to all discuss what the game is going to look like.
Yeah.
Like, make sure you're all on the same page. If you're all murder hobos, murder hoboing is fine. If you're all hard RPers who don't care if combat ever happens, that's fine. But if you have murder hobos and hardline RPers in the same group, they have to be able to talk through and come to a middle ground where they're all happy, or they need to find different games.
Right.
Uh, and the consent goes through all of that. Like, you all have to consent to, you know, there's a phrase. I think I'm stealing this from Dan Savage, the sex advice columnist, that a relationship is a fantasy that two people agree on. Well, D&D is the same thing. It's a relationship because it's a fantasy that 3 or 7 or however many people are sitting at the table all agree on. And having those adult conversations about what you want out of the game, what makes you happy in the game, and where your limits are before the game are what makes sessions great. And not having those conversations are what leads to bad games.
Well, and if you look at the games that we run on Saturday and Sunday, I had made sure that I had a session zero for those. Saturday night game, it's going to get darker. It's designed to be a dark horror type game. And I made sure that I had individual conversations with everybody that's going to be playing and letting them know this can get dark, you know. I'm going to be sending out this comfort form to all my players because at the time I just, had the conversation. What are you comfortable with? What are you not comfortable with? What's your limits with each of my players, and explain to them it's going to get dark. And to what level that they were okay with that. And that's why the most important session you'll ever have in your D&D game is session zero.
Okay.
Because if you are coming into a game as a player and you're expecting what I like to say rainbows, puppies, and unicorns, and you're getting, Tim Burton, you're not going to enjoy yourself.
Right.
And me as a DM, if I'm coming in and I've told you, hey, this is horror, and you all, I've put all the work into making it horror, and then you guys want, My Little Ponies, it's not going to work. So that's why you have your session zero. That's why it's the most important thing you'll ever do before you ever buy a manual, before you ever create an encounter, before you ever do anything, is to have that, to know that everybody is on the same page.
Yeah, I mean, we had I'm joining the Scions crew, and you and I had our session zero yesterday to like how do I fit into this world? What is this tone? Here's my comfort form. Here's where I'm at. And it's like a session zero isn't always at the beginning. It's whenever somebody new joins, and this comfort form isn't an end all be all. Like, all right, I filled it out once. Here you go. It's always good to revisit and touch base on about, especially like as Kier was saying, as a campaign develops and you start getting darker, touch base, be like, all right, is there anything new? And also, having it in a written form allows the DM to not have to remember everything. He could just look. He or
Yep.
she could just look at what's listed, and then they are set. And because maybe something happened between when filling this form out and when the game, and that could change. Like sometimes you were like, I thought I was good with this, now I'm not, and that is 100% okay.
Yeah, and sometimes you're not going to know what triggers you until it triggers you.
Yep.
Exactly.
Honestly, so yeah, and um, so we're gonna skip over the next thing on the list of topics was lines and veils. I think we have covered lines and veils sufficiently through the
Yeah.
course of talking about so we're gonna jump over that. We're gonna jump right to uh, uh, what some of the safety tool sites for D&D call this the consent flower. Like, okay, guys, that sounds lovely and all. It's very poetic sounding, but everybody in the fucking world knows what a stoplight looks like, and you're using the stoplight colors, and stoplight is the term we use in the kink community for this. So I'm just gonna call it a stoplight because consent flower sounds pretentious. I'm sorry. So so the stoplight method. You have your green light, you have your yellow light, and you have your red light. So yellow light is what we were talking about. Is veils, is a pullback. Red light is stop.
Yeah.
This is bad. I'm triggered hard. Let's not do this. Um, the most interesting one though for me is the question, why would you have green? Green just means, because green is good, right? Green is, I've already consented to this. I am actively consenting to this by being in. But green, holding up the green card is go harder in this case. It's oh, I'm digging this thing we're digging into right now. I want more. And I'm holding up cards here because that's a really easy. It works both online and analog. If you're sitting at an actual table, it's a way to not interrupt the flow of the game, but to communicate to the other players and to the DM where you're at. So if without because especially playing through Discord or other online
Yeah.
media, Zoom, Skype, Roll20, however you're playing, um, anytime someone talks, someone else has to stop talking. So when a DM is describing things, if the DM is describing things and you don't want to hear those things, you don't want to interrupt the DM's flow sometimes. So you could be like, back off a little, back off of that thing right there. I'm having an issue, or oh god, no. Um, and then one of the other things John mentioned the Xing out of things
Yeah.
earlier. You can also do that on a card, the X card, and that is generally just a skip it. Let's jump forward to the next part. I don't need any more explicit detail on that thing right there. Just not, please. It's not a we need to stop the game and I need a minute, because that's different. That means a hard line was crossed and I need to walk away for a minute. I'm going to peace out. We need to. Everybody needs to take a moment. We need to discuss what just happened so that I can, so why I'm red carding in this moment. But Xing out is just, hey, let's jump ahead. Let's fast forward the scene because this is bothering me. Let's just jump.
Yeah, it's to
So
be
X,
used before that line gets crossed. When you see the
right.
line coming, it's to get away from it before the line gets crossed. That way you
So
yeah.
the difference in these two, in the yellow and the X, is yellow is I'm okay, but we back down off of this a little bit? Can we pull back and ease up? X is just jump forward past it. So they serve a similar purpose, but they have different meanings.
Right. And the thing that with the red, if anybody would, I tell all my players, and a lot of people thought I was joking that at the start of the game, the safe word's porcelain, and I haven't been joking. That's if shit starts going bad and you need me to stop, porcelain, just say porcelain. Because I will trigger that. If someone throws a red card, the game needs to stop. You need to give that person a moment if they need to discuss, if they don't need to discuss. That's an important thing that you need to make a distinction between, because not everybody wants to talk about it.
Yeah.
And so if someone throws a red card and they're just like, I don't want to talk about it, I just need a minute, then give them that minute. Do not try to force them to talk about their feelings.
Yeah.
And I think that is an important thing to cover, because sometimes I know I suffer from PTSD. There are times that I will have something that will trigger and I'll have an episode, and I don't want to talk about it after I get out of it or as I'm coming out of it. I just want to get through it. So,
Yeah, the important thing to remember is everybody is different, and everybody's way of processing trauma, grief, hard lines, soft lines is different, and you need to first and foremost respect everyone's boundaries and everybody's way of doing that. It's also remember Wheaton's law. Don't be a dick. So if somebody says
Absolutely.
I need a minute, don't be a dick. Let them have the minute.
So, yeah, just to touch on that, if you red card, if you are a player who red cards, um, and you don't want to talk and communicate to your DM, I need a minute. I don't want to talk about it. I will say it is really helpful, um, that if you can at least articulate the subject matter that caused you to red card, to make sure that when you come back into session, the DM doesn't accidentally hit it again in like recapping where you were. So being able to at least articulate, it was this, it was, it was the natural disaster. I just picked something off the consent form. Um, I don't want to talk about it. Okay, take a minute. We'll come back. Or even when you come back before you
Yeah.
start again, say, it was the natural disaster. Let's not talk about it. And then the DM knows what the thing was, so and everyone at the table can know what the thing was, so that it doesn't get accidentally stepped on, because it is now a landmine if you don't tell people what it was. So, and I'm not saying you have to talk about it, but if you can at least point to the thing, point to the thing on the consent form that hurts right now, then it makes it easier for other people not to inadvertently trigger you right away again.
Definitely. And this is something, I know this wasn't on our topics that we outlined for the show, but I'm going to throw this in here right quick, because just like in the King community, aftercare is important every session. You
Yes.
can ask anybody that plays at my table. When we stop playing, the first thing I do is I check in with them. I check in with the group, and then I check in with people individually, just to make sure that everybody is okay, that everybody had a good time, that there was nothing that caused anybody any issues, because I want to make sure that my players are good.
Yeah. And you being a chronic pain sufferer, cannot always stick around for a long time after a session ends, but you do always stick around long enough to check in with us. And I, as as a associate producer on the show, I always try and stick around as long as absolutely possible uh, after the show in the chat. And one, I like talking to our friends. It's nice to bullshit a little bit after a game. But two, so that if anybody has anything they need to talk about, or if I hear something that may need to be brought to your attention, I can let you know after the fact. That we can talk it out. We can provide
Yeah.
aftercare for each other. Um, because we're a unit. We're a family.
Exactly.
And it's always
So,
okay to say, hey, I had some issues. Let's schedule a time to talk about it. Like it doesn't
exactly.
always have to be right after, because you might need some personal time to process all that. And if it's like midnight, because the shows go late, you're like, you know what? I don't have the brain power to articulate what I'm trying to convey. Let's schedule a time when we're both awake, both feeling good, so that way we're not running high off of emotions, and we're gonna actually have a conversation. Because sometimes you get into heated arguments when emotions are running high, and that's never conducive to a fun and safe environment.
Absolutely. All right, a couple last things before we move to our wrap up section. Um, so one of the safety tools that I see a lot online is the open door policy. I love this one. It is hard to do um, on stream. It works all right online. It works great at a table, but doing it on stream is harder, because this is the idea that you can get up and leave the table in a mature and adult way for any reason at any time without being judged, because if something was bothering you, whatever, you can just sort of stand up and walk away, and then come back when you're ready. For me, like my ADHD, I get I'm always fidgety. You guys might see me. I move around. I move a little. I'll be off frame a little bit sometimes because our camera frame is actually bigger than the frame that you see. Hold on, I'm gonna try box on the thing. So uh, so I have Twitch up on my TV screen so I can monitor myself because I know I have the ADHD and I like to fidget and I will move myself out of frame. Um, if we were playing at a D&D table, I would be standing up. I'd be walking around behind my chair. Um, you know, I'd be walking around with my dice in my hand, walking, just pacing back and forth because that's how I play. Because I need to, and sometimes I just need to get up and move. Or sometimes like things get intense, and sitting in a chair while things are really intense is really hard for me. And so that's part of the open door policy. The other part is of course like if you read out, if you red card and need to get up and walk away, that is really cool. But before the red card happens, when things are getting intense or whatever, if you need to be up and moving, it's easy to do that. You should be allowed to do that uh, at your table or in your D&D session. Doing it on stream because we are faces on camera is harder um, for us. Believe me, I've thought about it. I know they exist. I have my computer guy, the guy who fixes my computer, and He's got my laptop up and running really, 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 really well. Doubled all the things about it. It's wonderful. He works for a company, uh, Logitech. He works for Logitech. He works in their camera department, um, doing IT. They have a webcam that will track you. I have considered getting this webcam so that I can get up and move around behind my chair and stuff during stream and have my camera follow me. I'm just not sure how that would interact with Streamlabs for keeping me in frame. But it centers on you, and it will. He showed me it at his desk. He's like, it'll follow
Well,
you. It'll
schedule a
follow me
time once you
around.
buy it to test that out.
Well, I'm not going to buy one, but if he manages to get one, like from his company, I might take it from him. But no. So yeah, like do you guys have any thoughts on an open door policy in the game on getting up and moving during games and
Yeah, I mean, especially
walking away?
like home games, online games, 100% open door. When I play my online game, like we don't use cameras, we're just voice. So yeah, like sometimes I'll just have my wireless headset and I'll walk around my room, stretch the legs out, have my digital dice roller in case I have to make some rolls, grab a snack. Because the same thing is like if I'm sitting for too long. For streams, we have the be right back screens. That's like one of the reasons that we have this is so that the cast can take a break, get up, move around, because having to perform, because that's what we're doing on stream is we're performing. It's different than when we're sitting with our friends. It's like we're trying to be entertaining for the audience, and so that takes a lot of emotional spoons, and so sometimes that be right back screen is just to kind of reset those spoons, take a walk, grab a drink, be comfortable. And if there is ever somebody who like really has to go, a lot of times they'll just do this and they'll just flip down their
Yep.
webcam screen, take a minute, and then come back, and that's perfectly acceptable. It's never ideal, because as a performer, you always want to be there for your audience, but first and foremost is somebody's well-being, and if they like, what, for my well-being, I need to flip this down. That's great. They can flip it down, take a minute, the game can go on, and then they just come back.
I know that our stream is different because most streams take one break, we take two.
Yeah.
And part of that is because I'm a chronic pain patient and I have to make adjustments, do meds and stuff. Um, but I'm all for it, especially at a home game. I don't care if you're up, if you're walking around, as long as you're paying attention. That's my thing is pay attention. But yeah, I mean, shit gets intense and stuff, and like you're standing up and rolling dice trying to kill whoever and everything. I'm right there with you. Like it gets hard to sit still sometimes from the DM side
Yeah.
because shit
Oh,
is
I'm
just
sure.
so
Oh,
intense.
I'm a pseudo standard when I DM. Like sometimes I'll get up and stand and hover over everything. But I will say this: in a home game, if you are gonna get up and you are like pouncing around and like doing laps, and you make your way to the kitchen, you better come back with snacks.
Oh yes,
If
definitely.
you need to get up and walk around from the table for whatever reason, and you find yourself in the kitchen, you're coming back with snacks.
The yeah, definitely. Well, the one home game that I play in right now, we play in the dining room. Not really dining room. We play in the dining room when there are enough of us show up. Mostly we play around when it's their kitchen table. It's in their sort of little breakfast nook right off of the kitchen. So you can totally play from the kitchen without disrupting the game. So snacks are easily obtained. Um, uh, so the other thing that we need to cover, the last thing before we go to the wrap up, um, is check-ins. Um, uh, Also, I real quick, I want to point out that Tier called it Aftercare, which is the kink term. The technical D&D term for that safety tool is debrief.
Oh, okay.
But it's fucking Aftercare. Okay. Anyway, sorry. So check-ins. That is, if you're sitting at a table with someone, you're playing in a home game around a table. A check-in is literally just looking across at the person who might be having an issue, at a person who just did a hard emotional scene, at a person who, whatever, just catching their eye and giving them a little, "You okay?" Even silently, just "You okay?" And that and just making sure, just checking on your other players, on your, even checking on your DM. You know, when they're having to, because they have to play out multiple
Yeah.
characters. Sometimes they have to do the really hard emotional lifting along with each character who's having to do that. So check in. Uh, for us playing via camera, that is harder because I can't catch John's eye and know that John is looking at me while other characters are talking.
And that's when the technical age comes into play, and
Yes,
you just send a message,
that's
"Hey, Locke, you good?"
yeah, exactly. And or in the Discord,
Or yeah,
drop it in the Discord chat. At so and so, you good? You okay? Or yeah, send them a text, whatever. DM them on Facebook. However did you usually communicate with that person? Drop them a DM through Discord,
yeah.
whatever it is. Just pop them a little note,
I mean,
check
I've done
in.
it as simple as vibe check, just like that's just those two words, vibe check. How
Yeah,
you doing? And then people, my friends know, like that's me
yeah,
checking in on you to like, hey, how are you? Like, are you good? Do you need anything?
I will definitely at times send people private messages going, "Hey, are you okay? Are you doing all right? Are you having fun?" And sometimes for me, it's not even the content; it's the look in their faces,
Yeah.
And
oh yeah, you have you and I have had those moments. The tier can't tell if Locke is really angry
Or
or if
Karak.
it's just Locke playing his character really well. Always just that I'm playing my character really well. I am a great actor.
And that's one of the
No,
things
I'm
you can never check in too much because there could be that
right.
one time where you're like, oh, it's Locke just being in character, when it actually is Locke and not Karak.
And the other thing I think that we need to do with the check-ins, the aftercare, the debrief, however you want to word it, these consent forms and everything need to be revisited on a regular basis because life happens, things change. You may be okay with genocide. I'm going to pick one of them that, you may be okay with genocide today. And then you may sit through a session with someone like me that gives you genocide and you decide, I never want that again.
Yeah.
So it's important every so often, hell, every couple of months, just be like, hey guys, let's review our
Oh,
consent forms.
hey, yeah, that. Sorry, you saying the uh, that a DM might give you a thing that you didn't know was going to be triggered, and you're like, I was fine with it that once, but never again because that was hard.
Yeah.
Um, that made me realize something that is missing from the list currently on our form,
What is it?
which is cannibalism.
Uh,
I've 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 been there. I don't I don't know that I want to do that
add.
again, but
Where is it? Insert.
just as a note.
Hey, guess what? It's been updated.
Awesome.
Did I spell cannibalism correctly? All the chat's gonna learn how I can't spell. Oh, now all my boxes are mixed up. Now I gotta.
Oh no!
All right, I'm not doing this
all
live
right.
on stream. I'll fix it later.
Okay, fix it in post.
Wild
Again,
magic
this
is
is
not
not all
negotiable.
encompassing. Like, there's things that we didn't think about, and
But
that's why you have the conversations with your DMs.
right. So that brings us to our wrap up very nicely, which that periodic check-ins for consent was one of the topics in our wrap up, and that is so let's talk about putting this all together, um, and how you use that all of these tools are important, and that you have to. It's all really about communication and about feeling secure enough in your group and in the other players and the DM to have honest communication. And if you can't do that, um, then maybe that's not the right group for you. You have to be able to to examine yourself and the things that bother you in a way that you can communicate them to others so that they don't accidentally hurt you. And so that's where doing all the things, consent forms, figuring out where your lines and veils are, having your red card, green card, yellow card, and X cards, checking in, all of that makes just a better game.
Yeah, and
And
yeah, go ahead, dear.
go ahead, John. Go
Okay,
ahead, John.
I was gonna say, like we kind of touched on, this is an evolving list. Um, DMs, you should always, periodically check with your player. Says, hey, has anything changed? Players, if you encounter something, say, hey, here's my updated, or hey, now this is on my list. And that might not just be like with your one, like with me and Tier. Maybe I experienced something in another game that I was like, you know what? I do not want this in this game either. Hey, Tier, I have an updated consent form for you. Great.
Exactly.
It doesn't always have to be the DM saying, give it to me. The player can be like, hey, I want this to be a good and safe space for everyone. Here you go. And same thing, DMs, you can't expect the players to just hand it to you because they may not realize it or may forget or life happens. So players give it to your DM. DMs periodically ask for an update.
And here's the thing about it. It all comes down to communication. It's like I said, 95% of the problems that I've seen posted on the different Dungeon Master resources out there where people are having problems could be resolved if people would just sit down and talk like an adult. And sometimes having adult conversations is having hard conversations. As a dungeon master, and that's the thing, we've looked at this a lot through the eyes of a player, which is good because the players need to be educated and need to know they don't have to put up with things that make them uncomfortable. I've seen too many people like, but he's the dungeon master, or the rest of the group's okay with it. You don't have to be okay with it. If they're doing stuff that you're not comfortable with, find another group. There's always people looking to play tabletop. But the thing of it is as a dungeon master, you have to be mindful of not only your boundaries, but the boundaries of everybody at your table. And so that's going to bring me to this thing. What happens if I make a mistake? Because that's something I just thought of. If you make a mistake after the game, when you realize it, when it's brought to your attention or whatever, the first thing you do is immediately apologize. You own that shit and you have that adult conversation and make sure that you don't do it again because we're all human. And I can't remember shit that we did last week in game, much less, well, we wasn't streaming last week. Week before last in game, sometimes I have to go back and rewatch the day before we play. So just keep the lines of communication open. Have those discussions with your party, with your DMs, and talk.
And there is nothing worse than when someone makes a mistake and rather than apologizing for it and talking it out like adults, they double down. That is the worst. Do not be that guy.
Yeah.
Don't do
Exactly.
it. Don't do it. I want to issue a challenge real quick to our viewers. Go to YouTube to the Crit Crab or go to TTRPG Horror Stories subreddit. Go through those horror stories. Find me one that could not have been solved with communication. Find me one. I dare you. You can't do it. Everything can be solved with communication. None of those horror stories would have happened if good communication were on the table.
Yeah.
If it had happened. If you find one, I really want you to send it to me because I want to see an example where communication
And he'll
would
eat
have
a one chip if you do.
helped. You gonna buy me that chip, John?
No.
Those chips are $20 a piece.
I got a newborn. You know how expensive diapers are?
You think I'm made of chip money over here, John?
I go through a lot of diapers in my life right now.
John can't even afford chips for himself, much
Yeah.
less.
Shit.
All
Start a
right,
chip
I
fund me.
think
Chip fund me.
don't forget to goat fund me. I think that about wraps it up, guys. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's pretty good.
I feel like we
So,
pretty much covered as much as the topic as we could. That then ends with talk to your DM.
and DMs talk to your
And
players.
DMs talk to your players. It's all about communication is what this entire hour and a half is boiled down to.
Right.
Exactly.
We have put the tools in your hand to make communicating easier. You have a form you can fill out, but you saw as we filled in that form that talking about the whys and the yes ands and or the but ifs were important. Like, this is okay as long as it's handled in this way. So the communication goes right along with that. You use the tool because it makes communicating easier, but then you have to actually talk about the thing. You can hold up the card, but then afterwards in the debrief, the aftercare, you have to talk about the card and why you threw it so that you communicate to other people what was the problem so that it doesn't get revisited. Um, so on and so forth. It all comes down to communication of one form or another.
Exactly.
Communicating with your body, getting up and walking around because it's gotten too intense. That's communication too.
All right. So before we kick out of here, let's remind everybody who we are, where they can find us. John?
I'm John. You can find me here, usually behind the scenes, not on camera, on the Level Up TTV channel. You'll actually start seeing me on camera more often as I join Scions this week.
Hey.
Spoiler on who I'm going to play. Nope, you have to find out by tuning in. You can find me on the podcast Dungeon Drunks, where I play the half-orc barbarian Carlton Tanks. And then you can find me on the socials personally as that_film_guy.
Thank you, John.
Hi, gamers. I'm Locke Clark, and you can find me right here on Level Up TTV Saturday nights and Sunday nights, playing Bjarnor and Karak respectively. You can find me on the Facebooks and the Twitters at Locke Unruly. That's Locke with an H.
Thank you, Locke. And I'm Tear the DM, world's okayest DM. You can find me here on Level Up TTV on Saturdays and Sundays, DMing the Darkened Queen and the Shadowed Rose and the Scions of Oblivion. And you can find me on the social medias as Tier_the_DM. Before we go, I just want to remind you guys that life gets hard. We all know that. That's one of the reasons we even brought this up, is because experiences make who we are. But you're not alone. None of us are. So when times get rough, find those people that will be strength and will be light, and rest with them for a while until you're strong enough. And then you go out and be that strength and that light. Remember that love and inclusion, these are the torches that light the path to a better tomorrow. Come join us and be torchbearers. And remember, if someone doesn't know, instead of casting aspersions, cast guidance. Love you guys. Till next time.
Hey, everybody.